Hello everyone. It is 2025 and GCP recently updated, I don't know what you'd call it, the UI, the workflow for spinning up a VM in Google Cloud Platform. So if you're used to the old way of creating VMs, or if you're coming into this for the first time, I just wanted to put together this video to kind of step through the options, maybe give some tips and tricks, just help some people out. So that being said, let's jump right in. So I have just created a new project in my account. I called it Demo. I'm guessing enough projects have had Demo in the name that it gave me something completely different for the project ID. That's, if you're new to it, your project name is the friendly name of your project, so you know it when you're in your account. The project ID is kind of the universal, what everyone can kind of code against, and GCP knows which one. So because this is a new project, I'm going to need to go in to the little hamburger up here, go to Compute Engine, and VM instances. And I will need to enable this API, just saying, yes, in this project, I want to be able to create VMs. And that does take a moment, so I'll pause it here real quick and pick back up. Okay, that probably took just maybe 2 minutes, but notice it switched to manage here. I don't know if it always says that, but let me go back here, Compute Engine, VM instances, and I should, be able to create an instance now. Okay, so to run through this, just call this demo instance, and US Central 1 Iowa is probably the closest region to me. Zone really isn't too critical for me. I'm going to delete this right after. E2 is pretty standard. You can look up what these other ones are. I feel like, I don't know if I've ever really created one that isn't an E2. Maybe I have. So 99% I've done E2. That's fine. Down here, you can look. There's shared core, which if you look over here to the right, 2546, and let's see, 4 gigs of memory. Oh, it doesn't have one that's comparable, but shared core just means other VMs that maybe aren't yours might be sharing that compute power. And typically I'm running Docker and Docker Compose, so I like to do at least 8 gigs of memory. So if I switch that up, 49.92, so about 7 cents an hour. And you can go to advanced configuration. So that looks like it's dynamic. So if you want to set a ratio of the virtual CPUs to the cores, and I'm just going to ignore that. I don't think that's too critical. And here's one piece that tripped me up. You can hit create, but that is going to use what is configured in these options on the left. And that's not what I want. So I'm going to go to OS and storage. Right now it has it as Debian. I usually go with Ubuntu. I feel like that's pretty standard. And when selecting these, let's see, what do I want to point out here? The x86-64 AMD, most programs will work with that. There is also ARM, which is the architecture of Raspberry Pi. I'm not too familiar with it. It's gaining popularity, but just know if you select ARM64, any software, packages, things like that that you want to install on your VM will need to be ARM64. So scrolling down, I want a newer release. So by default, it looks like 20.04 LTS, which is long-term, and I can't remember the last word. Long-term support, that's what it is. Basically, that just means when they built the operating system, they're going to support it for, I believe it's 3 or 5 years, but just it's not going to go away. If you don't see the LTS, it's not really guaranteed. Coming down here, just up one version. I've used Jammy a lot. I use Linux Mint, which is built off of Ubuntu. I just know there's lots of packages and lots of things I can do with it. Just my preference. And we can go to advanced configuration. Let's see. Deletion rule. So when I delete the instance, yes, I want my boot disk to be deleted. The data on it is encrypted. I don't want to have to do that, so I'll let Google do it for me. I don't need snapshots. If it was something important, I might go ahead and do that, but I'll just leave that as is. 10 gigs is good enough for me. I don't want a backup plan, and I don't want to deploy a container in this VM, whereas it would put Docker in the instance, and then the container or image, not sure which, it would probably take an image and spin up that container in the VM. Okay. That all looks good. Networking. I'm not going to be setting up a web server. If I wanted to get to this from any IP address, I would need to have some ingress there, meaning it accepts port 80, HTTPS, port 443. If that doesn't make any sense to you, just wave your hand at that. Network performance configuration. The default network is fine. Observability. Install the ops agent, which would just put a piece of software in my VM that would then send the logs and other data to my project where I could view that if things went wrong. And enable to use screen capturing and recording tools. That's new. But I'm not going to be doing a screen capture on that, so that's fine. Security. Allow default access. That's fine. It's going to use the default service account, which again is fine. That's the way it's historically been, at least as long as I've been using it. And manage access. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and add an SSH key. And I will circle back if I remember in a moment. You can actually put that in your VM metadata. So any VM you start will have that SSH key. But I'm going to go ahead and add one just to this instance. And this is where I would do it. So I have a VM over here that is really new, running Linux Mint. Let's see, Firefox, because it doesn't have Chrome yet, and GCP SSH Key Gen. Okay, I'll make this a little bigger. It's a quick Google search, but you can see here how you would generate that key. And I'm going to Control-Alt-T to bring up a terminal. And because it's a VM, of course, the zoom is broke. So edit keyboard shortcuts. Here's a little tip. If you're on Linux and this doesn't work, the Control plus, Control minus, just go in here, zoom in, Control plus plus, Control minus, actually, there we go, Control minus. Those are the same as they were, but now it actually works. So that's fun. And I'm just going to copy that. Control-Shift-V to paste it. The username, I typically just use Gary. And for this one, this is going to create two keys, a public key and a private key. The private key being stored on your local machine. The public key will be put in the virtual machine, and that's what authenticates you. So if I go ahead and hit enter, and I'll just enter through the passphrases, Control L, and now if we go to our SSH directory, and there we can see those keys were generated. So we need to get the public key into our virtual machine, so we just need to cat that out. And just going to highlight all of that from SSH down to the username I gave it. If we come back, we should be able to Control V to paste that in. And that should be good. Advanced. Let's see. That's if we want something to run every time we start up the VM. Reservations. That's more of if you're an organization, and so say I'm running this in Iowa. Well, if I want to make sure that there will always be resources available for my VM project process to run, I'm going to have a reservation. We'll probably buy a block of it and then use that. But in this case, automatically use created reservation works just fine for me. And there is one thing I believe I skipped over here, because we are looking at 4992. And let's see. There should be a preemptible or spot instance here. I believe that would be under OS and storage. Oh, and actually we can bump that down. I don't need balanced persisted disk, which I believe is a combo of SSD and HDD. So if I do standard, that should bring the price down. So I went from 49, maybe saved me a few cents. Let's see. I think they had a different option which bumped that down even further before. So that's new. And let's see. I know it is in here. There we go. VM provisioning model. So 4932. That should take us down. 1996. So the difference being, if I had a standard, that would run, and no matter what other machines or processes were competing for resources on the same hardware that my processes were running on, it would still try to get mine to run. With a spot instance, it's saying, hey, if other things need resources, not necessarily my things, but organizations, other people's projects, go ahead and shut my project down. So it's not critical, but that does save you a lot of money. I think maybe only once I've had that happen when I was running a VM as a spot instance. So just be aware of that. It's a great money saver in my opinion, especially if you're working on personal projects. And then on VM termination. So if my VM instance does get preempted, something's struggling for resources, and GCP says, hey, this person has a spot instance, he says it's okay to shut it down. what do I want to do to my VM? There's stop and there's delete. I want to stop it because I don't want to lose all my work. And again, pretty substantial saving for just a little headache if it doesn't run a day, if you have something scheduled like that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and hit create, and that will take a few moments. While that's going, I do have a fresh install of Visual Studio Code here on my VM. I'm going to fire that up. There are two things I want to do here. One is, well, three, make it bigger. Now two things. I want to go here to extensions and look for SSH. Remote SSH install. This will just make our life easier. And let's see. SSH config file example. Not really sure I like those results. Make that bigger. That got AI going. Okay. This is the kind I like. The reason I like this is, well, let me get this file started and then I'll go into why I prefer this. So here, I'm just going to, in my .ssh directory, in my home directory, I'm going to do nano config, Control-Shift-V to paste that. So the identity file is going to be our private key. In this case, it was demo. The username we gave it was Gary. I'm just going to call this GCP, which is just a shorthand that's only known on my local machine. And it associates this configuration with using what's right here next to host. The host name is the public IP of the VM we're spinning up. We don't have that yet. Oh, yes we do. I'm going to go ahead and copy that. Switch back here. Control-Shift-V. Control-X. Y to save. Enter to keep the name. Give us some room here. Now I should be able to just SSH GCP. Type yes. And notice I changed from my virtual machine that was local, which was bye-bye, to demo instance. And if we ls cd to this SSH directory, we can see that we just have the authorized keys. Authorized keys being the record that was added when we went ahead and SSH'd in. So going back here to Visual Studio, once we have the remote SSH installed, if we go down here, connect to a host, GCP, I could have done connect to host in current window and avoided this pop-up. And if we look here, this is our VM on GCP. So there's not really anything in there. But I guess just proof of concept. Check that. Yes, I trust the authors. And here, I don't know, new file, proof. Hello from VSCode. If I can spell. Control S to save that. And now if we go back to our other connection here, we can see proof is there. And if we cat that out, that's what we added using the SSH connection through VSCode. Okay, that about covers everything I really wanted to get out of the way. One thing I would mention is create new machine image. This is something I really like because sometimes I will start a project and then life gets busy. I've got my code, I've got my VM going. I don't want to just stop the VM because that does have some associated costs, but I don't want to have to go back through what we just went through, selecting all those options, setting up the SSH key, all that good stuff. So I will take a machine image. Now, there is a cost associated with this just because of the storage of the image, but it's negligible. I think maybe a few pennies a month. So very cost-effective way. If you're developing something on your VM, you know you're not going to be able to touch it for a few weeks. Go ahead, put your code in GitHub or even just copy it local. Take a machine image, delete it. Then when you want to come back, use the image to create a VM. Bring your code down from GitHub or copy it back. You can also copy it using SSH like we showed. And then you're good to go. I'm going to call this VM 2025. That's the source. I only have one VM. If I had more, I would have those options. Location. This is where it's going to store this image. Don't really need to worry about that. I guess if you were in a global organization and you're using images all the time and speed is something you're worried about, you would want it close to where the users are or multi-regional, so it's stored in different locations. And let's see. Yep, that's just the configuration. I'm going to create. And I don't think that takes too long, maybe just a minute or two. So, actually, I'll stay on this page. I want that to finish. Oh, maybe I'll give it a quick pause. I'll leave it here and pick back up in just a moment. Okay, I'm not sure if that took a minute or two or just a few seconds because I was still spinning. I hit refresh and I see the green check mark. Okay, now if I go back to our VM instances, I just check the box there. And probably because I have it zoomed in, more actions, delete. Your screen's probably normal, so it's probably just listed here with the rest. Okay, now if I want to be efficient, so let me just make sure I'm navigating to this correctly. So compute engine, VM instances, create from machine image. There is our image, and we'll just create. And it looks like it just kind of gave it the name of the image, and then maybe, not sure if, I don't think that's epoch time. That might just be a random collection of numbers. But if we go ahead and copy the IP address, and I'm going to switch back. Of course, our connection dropped because we deleted the VM. And I just want to make sure the IP address is the same, so I need to go back to the SSH directory, back into the config file. There we go. And not sure why that copied. I have 3.4 for the first octet and 166 for the last. Oh, it gave me the same one. I guess it's not the greatest test here because I would have liked to have that do a different IP. Let's see, the remote host identification has changed. Well, this is good. You'll probably run into this eventually if you're spinning up a lot of VMs. It just gives you a nifty command here. Sometimes you don't see it, but just go ahead and run that. And you should be good. So here we are. I guess the proof would be that the actual host name has changed. Because we did create that file before the machine image. I guess I should have done it before, saved it, created the file, killed the VM, and then spun one up with the image. That would have been a better test. But notice that some of this data does persist. So if you install Docker and Docker Compose, if you maybe do some other installs, it's really great to be like, oh, I've got all the software I need for my project. I've got it going. Well, machine image, come back to it later, just spin it up, reduce your costs that way. And sorry if this is a jarring insert. One thing, I got done recording, and if you're completely new to GCP, I probably should have mentioned, make sure you come back in here to your VM instances, check the box, stop your VM. It's still going to charge you some cost for having it sit there. If you're done with it, come here and then just delete. You'll still be charged for the image that you have sitting there. Again, I want to say that's probably like 3 cents a month. But if you leave your VM running for the entire month, that's going to be that $25 on your bill. So just be aware of that. Make sure your cleanup is done if you're walking away. If you're not going to be coming back to it right away, stop it or delete it. Save yourself some money. Google makes enough. So sorry if there were a couple of detours in this video, but wanted to kind of give a full picture for those who are getting used to the updated UI, or if you're coming into the VMs on GCP fresh for the first time. This will hopefully get you started and get you going quickly. So that is all for this video, and I will see you in another one.